Hello, my name is Carl H. Henson Jr. I am a native Annapolitan and I went to the mighty Bates High School. I invite you to join me as I share an informative story about Bates and the staff that made it a center of excellence. So together, let's go back many decades to fully understand this wonderful story. What you're seeing now is an image of the original Bates High School from years past. As well, you can see the current Wiley H. Bates Heritage Park. The Heritage Park is located on the original site of the historic Wiley H. Bates High School right here in Annapolis, Maryland. The building was redeveloped into senior housing, a senior center, a boys and girls club, and a museum dedicated to the Annapolis merchant and civic leader Wiley H. Bates, the museum known as the Bates Legacy Center. Now, secondary education was not provided to African Americans in Anne Arundel County until 1917, when a high school was established for black students in Annapolis. This secondary program was housed in the existing Stanton Elementary School building. However, by 1930, the enrollment was rapidly outgrowing the available space. The Stanton Parent-Teacher Association, Wiley H. Bates, and others interested in Annapolis citizens approached the County Board of Education on this particular matter. Their efforts eventually led to the establishment of Wiley H. Bates High School. Built in 1932, Bates replaced the previous secondary school for coloreds in Annapolis, Maryland, and operated as the only high school for African Americans in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. Bates continued operations as a high school until the integration of schools in Anne Arundel County in the mid-1960s. The school opened in January 1933 with Mr. Frank B. Butler as principal and just 7 faculty members. When the school opened, no transportation was provided. The first students lived mostly in the Annapolis Eastport parole area. If others wished to attend, they had to provide their own transportation. Finally, my friends, transportation was first provided in 1937. And within 10 years after Bates opened, the enrollment had grown to 910 and the faculty to 33. The school offered academic, general, and vocational arts. With the building of Bates High School and provision of transportation for students, African American students who lived as far north as Brooklyn Park and as far south as Friendship went to Bates. And all African American students in the city of Annapolis who attended Bates High School went to Bates before the integration of public schools in the county. In addition, my mother, Mrs. Betty Henson, taught social studies at Bates. So there are many African American families native to Anne Arundel County with multiple generations of Bates attendees and graduates. Like me, these families and individuals have a very special connection to Bates. The significance of Bates could be told by focusing on the determination and efforts of Wiley H. Bates, who provided the original funding of $500 to purchase land for the school. It could also be shared by remembering the contributions of the many African American carpenters, bricklayers, other tradesmen and families who contribute the funds, the materials, and the labor to build this very unique school. But instead, I will focus on the significance of this school by sharing the story of just a few of those teachers who were the core of efforts to ensure the quality education for nearly a half a century of educational excellence. These teachers made Bates High School a center of excellence. Wiley Bates High School holds a very special place in the hearts of African Americans in Anne Arundel County. Before we are finished, you'll understand why.
My name is Donald Kess.
My name is Nancy Wood Giss.
My name is Joyce Pikett. The name is French Picot McManus.
Okay, John A. Maple Jr. taught at Bates from 1956 to 1966.
I am Laura Plummer Webb Marshall, and better known as Laura Webb.
My name is Betty Lee Jenkins Colbert.
I am Claretta Smith Wingo.
My name is Bernice Johnson Tillett. I was Bernice Johnson when I taught at Bates High School.
I am Clementine Fisher Johnson.
My name is Anne Hudson Jenkins.
My name is Burma Smith Hill.
My name is Anne Goodwin Ventes.
Shirley Toy.
I'm Doris Knight.
My name is Robert M. Brooks.
So I grew up in what is called Parole there. That was, Parole was annexed by Annapolis, city of Annapolis, a fair number of years ago.
So that means you went to school?
I went to school at Bates, graduate of Bates.
And then turned around and you taught?
Came back and student taught and taught at Bates there.
Interesting,
For
interesting.
me personally, I had parents that pushed me.
Okay.
There. My mother was an educator.
All right.
So that's what I always say that, you've heard the Rosenwald School, haven't you?
Yes, yes.
My mother taught down in Galesville.
Yes.
At the Rosenwald School.
I know where that's
If there hadn't been a Rosenwald School, I may not be here today.
But the reason we came here, because I liked the area where I work, it was during the period of integration.
All right.
And South Carolina was a state that did not want to accept it. So they started the idea that if you want to go into integration or you approved of integration, you're going to sign an affidavit. And that was to say that you're not going to become a member of NAACP.
Oh, you had to sign?
Oh, yeah. They had that going on. And so if you want to work, I'll make it more clear. If you want to work a state job in the state of South Carolina, you could not be a member of NAACP. Okay. I came here with I think, a good background in music. I taught at Elizabeth City State Teachers College, and I did some work with South Carolina State, as it was then. I don't know what it is now. And then I taught school in the city of Gibraltar, South Carolina.
I taught from 1946 to 1952, 6 years. 4 years I had taught. We commuted every day.
Commuted from?
From Washington, D.C. There were about 4 or 5 of us who commuted. The first time we commuted, for the first 2 years, we went in a car with Mr. Baxter, who was a shop teacher. And he would pick us up at certain places, and we would all ride in his car, his Hudson. If anybody's old enough to know what a Hudson is. Okay. So we rode in his comfortable car to Bates, got out of the car right in front of Bates High School. Afterwards, when the war wasn't so bad, and there was gasoline, and there were cars that needed tires could get them, then he began to use his car. And so we rode then. And in the meantime, when the war was going on and we were bad and didn't have anything, we rode on the Greyhound bus.
But I guess it was a spirit of, let me just come back to Bates. I guess it was a spirit of what you saw as an amalgamation of the spirit of those who are here. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you could point, we didn't know everything they did, mm-hmm. but they were such excellent models mm-hmm. for us. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were models for us that you couldn't see a blemish. You know, mm-hmm. maybe there were blemishes there, but we didn't see the blemish mm-hmm. there. Mm-hmm. And there were no disciplinary problems. You know, kids were not being suspended, mm-hmm. and they supported and empowered mm-hmm. us mm-hmm. rather than demonizing us mm-hmm. or calling us ugly names, or because I've seen teachers call children, students ugly names,
diminishing them,
mm-hmm. and annihilating them, really. Mm-hmm. But I never saw that here. Mm-hmm. They related to the students in a sense of empowering us. Mm-hmm. I just want to keep that. And that each student was important.
Mm-hmm. The teachers at Bates included former students who came back home after college, as well as teachers who migrated to this wonderful Annapolis area. Now, some were married couples like the McManuses, the Paces, and the Knights. In addition, the range of experiences shared by these wonderful teachers included new college graduates, seasoned teachers from other teaching assignments, and even some with previous military experience. The teachers at Bates were all college graduates, and even some had master's degrees. This level of training boded well for ensuring quality education for the Bates students, and it is, I should indicate, a testimony to the qualification of this highly educated teaching staff. As Bates grew in enrollment, this institution was particularly positioned to make a difference for its students. The school staff included a mix of highly trained professionals in a wide range of subject area, an extremely caring collegial work and environment. enhanced by supportive and active parental and community involvement. Hence, with this combination of these positive factors, the faculty at Bates could be described as operating in a center of educational excellence. The Bates staff and network was like one big extended family. The principals who provided leadership to Bates High School had a rigorous vetting process, which often included auditions. Mr. Butler, Mr. King, and Mr. Hilliard, I remember them all, as well as the vice principals, ensured strong administrative leadership, along with Mrs. Wiseman, who was an administrative leader for the lower grades. Now, friends, these leaders were looking for the best of the best. Prior to school integration, teaching jobs for African American teachers were sort of limited to schools for African American students. Hence, they had fewer job opportunities. Therefore, these teachers encountered many job challenges, thereby increasing the possibility for the Bates principals to select and acquire the best for their students. So what was it like being a teacher at Bates, and how did the various elements work together for the students? Let's find out from some of the teachers.
So what did you teach? What subject?
When I started, I was teaching core.
Okay.
And when I left Bates, I was teaching special ed.
All right.
Well, I'll tell you, the way it was with special ed, they didn't have the reading materials and things for kids that age.
Okay.
Most of anything that came to us were like elementary level, and that wasn't high interest enough. So we made our own stories.
Okay.
We would take, like I would take the kids on a field trip up to the grocery store.
Okay.
And we talk about it after we get back, and then we write our stories, and I would write them on charts in the classroom. And you know, it's like a book. We end up having like a book.
Okay.
And I would often, I'll get grocery store ads.
Okay.
And we would make our grocery list. And they would learn, you know, different vegetables and fruits and things.
Okay.
And had them to list, if they were going to the store, and I would take them. There was a store up on West Street. I don't know whether it was a Safeway or what. But we go in there with them and show them the different things. And then they make their grocery list. And then we'd add the prices. So you teach your writing skills, and they learn the math, all in, you know. We did that. I mean, that was a constant thing.
And when I first went there, they had me, it was during the war, and they had put a course in called Aeronautical Science. And the principal assigned me to teach aeronautical science.
And coming back was really an honor. It really was, because I got to teach with those who had taught me, and I had taken, hopefully had taken on some of their characteristics and you know, motivation, wanting to be a teacher. And so I was basically working with living legacies.
Oh, that's Yes. And my husband, James, he would always, I mean, he had a very outstanding football team, and he had that because he would drive the children anywhere they had to go after practice. He'd put them in his car because, you know, most kids didn't have cars at that time. And the parents sometimes couldn't pick them up, so he would have to take them home. When James died, I got a call from one of my students, Joanne Steed. She grew up right down the street from the school off of Spar Road. And she called me, and she was calling to express her sympathy that James had passed. And she went and asked me a question. She said to me, "Miss Webb, do you remember that time they were fighting to be the #1 team in Anne Arundel County? That time that you benched the whole first team?" And I said, "Did I do that?" She said, "Oh, yes, you did. We could not play. You played the second team the whole game." And I said, "Well, why would I do something like that?" She said, "Because we said we weren't coming to practice." And they made the decision not to come to practice. And I made the decision, win or lose, this is what we this is what the day is like. And she said, you know, that was the best teaching I've ever gotten, because, you know, she was superior, and we just thought that no one would do that. But I did. And to hear her ask me that question, I'd forgotten all about it, you know. At that time, I was angry with them, and I had to show them who was in charge.
Well, we didn't have a program that I recall for special ed, but we had levels, you know, and you know, the lowest level children, you would just have to adjust your the structure of your teaching. And like I said, I took many a child, I stayed after school many a day, and took lots of children home with me, because I live right in Annapolis. And you know, worked with them and gave parents ideas about how to increase their learning. So just a little more effort with the
extra effort
with the lower levels.
I had an advantage of that. And then when I taught at Bates, I exposed my students to coming over here. We had a tour of Washington D.C. a couple of times. And they paid their money, and I got a bus, and we rode from Bates over to Washington. And listen, in those days, kids didn't wear sneakers and dress like as they dress now. I said, you have to dress up. You do, Miss Johnson? I said, yes. You have to wear proper shoes, wear a jacket, and the boys, you know, the sweaters, and they look very, and I said, but bring your own lunch, because there were not many places that were going to be able to, where they were going to be able to eat. And they got so, the kids, I forgot the name they had, because they knew I wasn't taking any foolishness. And then too, I wasn't that much older than some of them. It was after the war, and after the war, I had a couple of students who had come back from being in the Army or Navy to go back to school to get their high school diploma. So they're almost as old as I was, because I was about 21, 22. And I remember having this fella, he was so serious, but he wanted his diploma from high school.
That's wonderful.
There was some who tried me. I could think of one guy's name in particular, but I won't call it. I never forget him.
Maybe you'll see him sometime.
Oh, yeah, but he couldn't get it over on me, but he can, you know, he was a good basketball player, and the teacher who was a history teacher there encouraged him. He told me later, you kept him from going to college. I said, I didn't keep him, his grades kept him, you know. But he was something else. And he was trying to come in class late. And I said, nobody comes to my class late. And I also told him, you come to school prepared the way you will do for your job. Your preparation will be your notebook, your pencil, and your pen. This fellow would try me. And when I had a test, they had to have a test all that particular period. He came unprepared. He didn't have his pen, he didn't have a pencil. And I also told him all the time, you do not lend your tools to anyone else. You're going, this is your job, you have to come prepared. So then there he was trying to, and the kids were nervous. They would like to have lent him a pen or a pencil, but they knew better, so he was running up and down the hall, finding a pencil and pen to come back. And by that time, the test was half over. Oh, it was something else. But he was always trying to get over on me. And I wasn't going to let him, because at that point, I'm like 22, 23 years old, 22 years old. No.
Okay. And we would talk a lot back and forth in class, as I talk a lot now. And I told you Harry and I stammer.
Yes.
But people who stammer and stutter sometimes get hung up on a word or a syllable or a sound, and we can't get off of it. It's difficult. I had speech lessons when I was in Baltimore City. Harry was responding. Harry's Curtis Bradford, and he stammered, and he got hung up on this one letter, and he could not get off of it. I mean, it was just there. It went on. He was like that. What's that? Die-hard rabbit.
Yes. Just keep going on.
But see, we already knew that you don't laugh at people, because see, we had that from Miss Marshall back.
Yes.
But it didn't matter. It was too much. Leo, who I told you was a great speaker, he started. He burst out, and everybody was holding it in, and I didn't. We all just laughed, and Mrs. Tate let us laugh it all out, because it really was, it had gotten to the point that it was humorous, and it was even humorous for Curtis, because we loved each other. We didn't laugh at, we laughed with. And when we got finished, Mrs. Tate told us, as long, or whatever else she said, don't you ever, I mean, she really she had the presence of mind I respected so much. She did not stop us mid-laughter because there was no need to. She let it die itself out and then brought it back at the time when we would be most receptive to her explanation as to why we don't do. Now, I didn't laugh. I sat right beside her seat. Not because I was wonderful, I was fearful. I was right beside her seat.
I understand.
And I identified with him. I knew what he was doing. I had done it and was going to do it in the next few minutes anyway. But I remember that experience with her. It was marvelous. We laughed straight. She did not stop us. She did not reprimand us. She just explained that this is how you do it and don't do. And it was clear that Leo wasn't laughing at him. He just laughed. It was everybody. It was beautiful.
Such a learning experience.
And Harry was happy. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful, positive experience.
Okay.
Well, my teaching experience at Bates was, well, it was quite an experience of having to create everything that you gave your kids. We didn't have books issued to us as such. The books that we had came from out of the county or from the white schools that were used. I looked at one of the copyright dates, 1938. We had to be very creative. We had to search for everything that we wanted to try to teach the kids everything that they needed, which meant that you had to do a lot of writing on the boards. So we developed a very close relationship, highly respected as teachers. In fact, they just looked up to us. We were the surrogate parents, you know, of their children. And it was a wonderful experience. Now, when I came here, so strange when I look back maybe 60 plus years ago, when we came to school, we wore heels, we dressed in our suits, we had our purses and our gloves. Every teacher
wore gloves?
When we entered the building, we had on, that's what we had on, gloves.
No hats?
No hats. But gloves and heels, and taught in those heels all day long.
Well, when I got to the 11th grade, and in the English class was a lady by the name of Mrs. Pace. And she was another one, and it seemed like her and Miss Allen were sort of like sisters in the way as how they presented their classrooms. And I can still remember, and when I do reports now, have to write a letter, I can always remember the fundamentals that I would have to go through with Miss Pace. And if you had to do some type of composition or what have you, she wanted to make sure that you had the title right, it was spelled right. She would call you up, she would check it, then you would move on to doing the outline and how you had to present the outline and what have you, and then you would have to start doing the actually putting the material together. And then after that, you would have to present it to the class. You had to get up in front of the class and speak. And I always remember this, and here it is, 60 years later, I still remember her words to me, that, oh, you speak like a Philadelphia lawyer. And I didn't know what a Philadelphia lawyer was, but later on I found out what a Philadelphia lawyer was, how they spoke and what have you.
So that was a compliment.
Yeah, it was. And she was another one was very meticulous in how you did things and what have you. And I still remember, and when I do reports now, I still go back to that basics of in the 10th and 11th grade of how she wanted things done.
I'm still hearing you say high standards, high expectations,
yes,
and very
and she was very inspiring to you and what have you, and especially the term that I use, Philadelphia lawyer. And I always remember when you did your outline, you had to have if you have a Roman numeral 1, you had to have a Roman numeral 2. If you had an A, you had to have a B. And I still, 60 years later, I still remember that. And she was very, very good in my life. And as you can see, 60 years later, I'm still echoing some of the things that she had taught me in her class.
That's wonderful. So you said she was inspiring.
Well, she used to call me up, and when she was grading my papers, she said, you could go a long way if you really put your mind to it. Okay. And, you know, at that time, as a young person, you know, 15, 16 years old, it doesn't have the impact as it would have later on in life. But you still remember those things, and then as you got out into the world, you know, those things go back to your memory, and you start thinking about them. And especially I used them as I went into the service and as I came home and raised a family, and I taught my children the same way. And I used those two women as examples as to raising my 3 girls the same way. You know, always was neat, always was immaculate dressed and what have you. Everything seemed to be in place with them, not only in their dress, but in their mannerisms and how they carried things. And I don't know if you know that Mrs. Pace was married to Mr. Dallas Pace, and he was another one that inspired me also.
How so?
Well, he was a no-nonsense person. He taught us science, and one thing I do remember about him, we had the Boy Scouts at Bates High School, and we had to go all the way to Baltimore to go swimming. And he was the one that saw that we got up there and we had to go all the way up past my community. He took us all the way up into Baltimore, and we went at the YMCA to swim. And then he brought me and another friend of mine that lived in our community back home. And I never forgot that, because of the fact that he didn't have to do it. That was an outside activity, but he took it on his own time to see that we, since we did live so far away, to see that we were picked up and carried to the YMCA and brought back home. He was just a tremendous person and what have you. And
he taught science?
He taught science taught me 11th and 12th grade science at Bates High School. Okay. And he was married to Mrs. Pace. And so those are 3 of the teachers that did a lot to me in my life, especially later on in life. And there's one more was Mr. Weatherford. Okay. Mr. Weatherford was a woodworking teacher. And I don't know what it is, but those teachers impressed me as to how they carried themselves and how they dressed and how they behaved in class and what have you. And he was another one that before you could do a project such as we was going to do, you build a little birdhouse, you had to lay it out. You had to put it down on scale as to how this was going to be built, and he would check your paper and what have you. And I know some of the guys that wasn't quite good in math and laying out their scales, I would help them lay out their scales, because you could not build a birdhouse or a toy chest until those things were done. And so he at that time, you know, you felt as though that, you know, he's being hard on you, but he was trying to get you to, you know, to learn the whole mechanics of woodworking and what have you. And so he was another one that I was inspired. But those are about the 4 teachers that I still have a love for them. And every now and then when I look at my yearbook, I always go back, and it reminds me of those people that had a big impact on my life and what have you. Okay. And it kind of, I like to say, helped made me the way I am today. Okay.
I heard you.
This was the social hub, I believe, because you have to remember back then what Annapolis was like. Okay. It was a segregated town. We had our own movie theater, the Star Theater. Okay. We had our own YMCA on Northwest Street, which is, you know, of course, that's no longer, neither one of those 2 buildings is still there. And so the activities took place, our little dances. Sometimes we had Friday night dances at the old St. Philip's Hall, up there on Northwest Street. Yes. And then we had school dances here, you know, down in the cafeteria, or gym, I guess it was. And of course, families always celebrated events. The plays, we had our plays every year. And Villa Taylor, who was a PE instructor, had a dance group, and we had a dance recital every year.
Okay.
And that was. But this brought the community out. These were things that the community looked forward to, you know, seeing every year, to attending every year. Because this was the only school.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, unless you were from out of town, you did go, and you went to school, here.
Okay.
And I remember another group, not sports, but the drama group by Mamie Glenn was our sponsor. It was called the Starlighters. And that was very prominent. We had lots of members, and they were the ones to put on the annual play every year. But that was really good. And
How was the community involved in Bates during your years?
Well, it was heavily involved there. Number one, because it's the only black high school in the county, and so people were from all northern and southern in the county and right here in the Annapolis area. They were, I would say, they had an interest in what the kids were doing there. They had the motivation to find out about it, and so it was an intense community interest in the school. All types of community activities, school activities that were held, were usually well attended by the community there.
So it didn't, there was no way I would have accepted any kid in my class or my homeroom with bad grades. No way. I went to the parents, the kids' home. I would go to the parents' home, and I told the parent, whatever you do, have the student there, because I don't want them to tell you that they didn't. Miss we ain't got no business going to school. No teacher go to parents. That's how they talk.
It was really a village, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
They knew me. Some of the parents knew me very well.
Yeah. Sounds like it was a village that really focused on making a difference for the young people.
And they said, if Ms. Covers said you did it, you did it. The teachers had their teams, and we had our teams, and then whatever kind of, any educational things, the parents were there. I mean, you would think the Orioles were playing.
Bates was a cornerstone of everything that went on in Annapolis.
Okay.
You know, we had all the social events that they needed. We had all the sporting events that they needed. Bates was just like the hub of everything that went on in the city of Annapolis. And we had this was a great school. We had science fairs, and we had everything. We had one of the greatest science fairs that I can remember seeing in school, and I've taught at all since then.
Well, we had activities that included the parents. I remember one time we had operetta.
Okay.
And the parents were very much involved in the costumes and getting children ready for the operetta.
All right.
And we had field day.
All right.
And,
is that a sports day, field day?
Yes. You know, that was, and you know, and most amazing thing I remember about that was wrapping the maypole.
Okay.
You know, the weaving in and out. So that was very good. And everybody was cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they didn't mind helping one another. I said, well, no, well, that's your job. You know, well, you're supposed to do that. If they could help, they helped. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bernice Gibbs,
okay,
probably was. She was very outstanding and had the most outstanding choir. She had a choir, she had a quintet, she had a quartet, and her choir was like 125, 130 people.
Okay, big.
Big, and they sounded like the Mormon Tabernacle.
Okay.
They were just so superb.
That would be wonderful
and
to hear
Jim,
some of the
it was just very outstanding. Wherever she took the choir for different contests, she would always win first place.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Was the community, did they see Bates activities as a hub of activity?
Yes, definitely. It was the center of the community.
All right.
And then at one point, there was a community cultural arts club program but it consisted mostly of the teachers, but it used the community. It was called Igbo Arts.
Oh, yes.
All right, so the teachers were the incentive for that. But the plays that we did and stuff like that, that was all the community.
So Igbo Arts was a Bates community endeavor.
Right, and I was one of the founders.
Okay.
This is gonna get you. Downtown, in town, and out town.
Downtown,
in town,
and
out town were all sections of Annapolis. But when people say I went downtown, they knew where you went.
Okay.
And if you say I was in town, they knew where you were.
I'm already lost.
And then if you said I live out town, they knew where you lived.
Okay. So out town maybe was like Parole area?
Yes, it was.
And downtown was near the harbor?
Yes.
And where's in town?
Clay Street.
Okay.
Clay Street in Washington
Okay. All right. Very good. And then, so if I lived in Severn or I lived in Deal, what was I then?
I don't know what you were. You just Deal or where? Humphrey or...
Okay.
No.
All right.
No. Yeah.
It is clear from the records that Bates was an educational powerhouse. The school excelled in sports programs, becoming multi-year champions. It had an extensive extracurricular activity, including science fairs, dance and dramatic performances, and a 200-member choir that could compete at the highest levels with the best performances. Furthermore, the school's academic program was engaging for all students, the college-bound as well as those directing their future towards trades and work careers after completing their education. As one teacher so well put it, failure at Bates was not considered an option. Bates teachers ensured that all students were ready to successfully meet their futures. It was their expectation, and it was reflected in their actions. In fact, the teachers worked to enhance the curriculum. They went over and above modifying the poor, outdated, and overused material, exposing the students through field trips, personally transporting students to events, ensuring parental involvement, and simply going above and beyond to ensure a successful educational environment. As shared by one teacher, Bates ensured that the school was a beacon of success for all. Like the Hebrew children, these teachers made bricks out of straw. However, their accomplishments were not achieved without overcoming some major challenges. And noted there was a challenge of transportation for the students as well as for the teachers, the lack of appropriate instruction materials, and a long period of lower teacher salaries. These and other challenges would have stopped those less dedicated to their mission. Transportation challenges meant that students encountered long hours traveling to and from home and school, some leaving as early as 6 o'clock in the morning. This limited student participation in extracurricular activities. Also, inclement weather, no buses meant no school. It was estimated that 75% or more of the students at Bates traveled to school by bus. Given these challenges, the staff at Bates had many barriers to overcome. But these teachers had struggles to overcome in their own lives, but successfully they forged ahead. They brought their strengths to their roles as teachers at Bates. Through the unity of the teaching staff, the leadership of the principals, and the support of the parents and the community, the staff created an overcoming spirit that ensured the success for the students and, of course, the school.
Teachers were, by and large, were extremely dedicated, by and large. And they came, well, they were like me. They couldn't get jobs most other places, so a number of them came from Washington and Baltimore, Washington, Baltimore. So there used to be a couple of teachers that would have what are called commuter cars. They would pick teachers up and bring them there. And from Washington, I remember specifically Mr. Baxter, yes, who taught shop. He would always have 3 or 4 teachers, who were regular commuters there for them. Yeah. Experience for kids in that I used to always talk about when I was coaching baseball, and we would go to play in Baltimore City, and believe it or not, travel through downtown Baltimore, and some of the guys had never been to the city. And they were looking up at all the tall buildings, and that's the real truth there. There was an experience for them.
Yes, yes.
Going through Baltimore City and seeing everything like that.
How long did it take you to get to school?
At least 40 minutes.
40 minutes?
About 40 minutes.
All right. And if you missed that bus, you were in trouble?
Yes, and sometimes the bus wouldn't stop for us when we were coming out of the turn.
Why is that?
They thought we should be at the turn instead of walking to the turn. You know, my brother missed the bus. He was 1 year older than I.
Okay.
He missed the bus, and he started out walking.
Right.
And he walked as far as from Bates to the South River Bridge.
Okay.
And he stood there and he just cried.
Bless
he
his
was
heart.
afraid to come across the water.
Bless his heart.
But he had walked from Bates High School all the way. No one offered to give him a ride at all. My parents started looking for him.
And found him.
And they drove towards the school and they saw him as they came across the bridge.
Yeah.
So we went there, but I missed Bates. I missed the children very much, the students I had.
Mm-hmm.
They were most of them so willing to learn. You know, and those kids who came in on the buses every day were there. Now, if the buses didn't run because the roads were bad, they didn't have these super highways they have now. So the weather was bad, and it was bad snowstorm or whatever, and the buses couldn't run. We didn't have school.
I taught in town at the old Stanton Center. It was called Bates Junior High School. Well, we had part of the junior high was here at Bates. The other part was in town. And we only had one grade there. That was just the 7th grade.
Okay.
And we had students at the Stanton Center. We had some students at First Baptist Church, some students at Wall Street Hall, some students downtown at the rec center. And we had classrooms in all those places. Well, we had nowhere to house all the students, so what happened, we simply used those buildings to accommodate the students that we had in our enrollment there. There was only one grade.
Okay. Mr. Butler was my teacher when I was in high school.
Okay.
But when I came back to teach, Mr. King was the principal then.
Okay.
Because you know what? That's interesting. Mr. Butler was the principal, but when the folks got together and fought for equalization of schools and so forth, and the board demoted Mr. Butler and got a new principal. That was Mr. King. Okay. So when I came back, Mr. King was the principal.
Interesting.
They had demoted Mr. Butler to a teacher because he had fought for equal rights and so forth.
So it was
Right.
not about his training, his experience,
Nothing.
Retaliation?
No, just it was just they were. Mr. Butler had fought for equal rights. Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
and they demoted him.
As times change, so did Bates. With the advent of civil rights, schools in Anne Arundel County were integrated in the mid-1960s. Prior to its closure, Bates had the largest graduating class of 269 students in 1964. Now, when Bates High School closed in 1966, the teachers were reassigned to schools across the county, and the students were relocated to their local or neighborhood schools. Eventually, the facility became Bates Junior High School before it was later closed permanently as an educational center in 1981. However, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, in 2006, the entire location was renovated and became the current Bates Legacy Park. However, during this period of change, the challenges, as many as they were addressed and overcome by the Bates teachers. Their abilities, qualifications, and professionalism shone through. For these teachers, Maya Angelou's poem, "And Still I Rise," rings very true. The former teachers rose to prominence.
Well, June 1966, Mr. Hill calls all in the library, which is where the Legacy Center is located.
And he was the principal?
Yeah. Mr. Hilliard was the principal. He gave us all our assignments. And I think it was like 2 days before school closed, and said, well, I'm going to give you the name of this school. You can go by. We really didn't know where they were. And you can go by and look at your schools for next year. So that's how we got our assignment.
So everybody received notice sometime in the spring that you were going to be reassigned? And how did you know you were going to be reassigned?
No. We got assigned about 2 days before school, before the school year.
You didn't know?
We didn't know.
Before then that
No.
you wouldn't be coming back to Bates?
No.
That was a shock.
Because some people stayed here.
Okay.
Some people stayed here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But most of them moved?
Most of us scattered throughout the county. Now,
that must have been a tearful meeting.
Well, it was for some. It wasn't too bad for the teachers, but a lot of the kids, for them the transition was kind of rough, because when they were going to especially all-white schools, a lot of times they were called names and they were ridiculed and what have you, but not going so bad for the teachers. One thing that I found out when I went to teach at Arundel Junior High School, it was that we were as well prepared as any of the other teachers, for instance, the white teachers at those other schools. We were well prepared. And Mr. King and Miss Wiseman and Mr. Hilliard, they taught us well.
That's wonderful. And you didn't know that until you moved?
Didn't know it. We were well prepared.
But 1965, they had started integration, and they asked for a corps of teachers who would like to go for sensitivity training. And this was put on by TAC, the Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County. And I volunteered as one of the corps teachers to go down for sensitivity training. And that took about half a year, but I was still teaching, but I was going for sensitivity training. So I was allowed time to go learn how to get along once we did the total desegregation. Okay. But of course, at that time, Bates was the only Negro school in the county, and all the children from South County to North County came to Bates. Right. I think about 75% of the population rode buses, and about 25% were from the city.
That's a lot of transport.
20 to 30 miles one way each day. When the sessions I went to were only for African American teachers.
All right.
So I don't know whether they had them for the other teachers or not.
Okay, and was there any transition training for students at all, or was it just the teachers?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
So the students had to
just go into the new and
it's like jump in and
I think
swim.
they did. I think they did. I really don't recall because I was in that during that time frame, and I don't remember any offers for transition for the students.
All right.
Well, there was a distinct difference because, like I said, Bates was like an extended family to me because we were all Negroes then, and we could relate to each other. You know, being from families and the teachers, we could all relate to each other. And then when I went to Annapolis Junior High School, I had just taken the sensitivity training classes, and I met with a lot of displeasure. I had children to turn their seats around so they didn't have to face the chalkboard.
Turn their backs
to me. And all kinds of things that were not pleasant at the beginning.
No physical problems?
No, I didn't have any physical problems, just subtle things, but they sort of crush your spirit. But I did my best, and I became involved with a lot of the after-school activities, had a reading club, did spelling bees, tried to interact with the children.
Where did you get your support from when you went into your first integrated school environment? Was it the teachers there? Were there teachers from Bates that went with you? I mean, what was your support
there were
system?
5, I believe, of us that went from the Stanton Center.
Okay.
So, you know, I knew them, but they were in different, it was such a large building.
All right.
But I did develop, you know, a real good relationship with Mr. Clifton Brown.
Okay.
And a couple of the teachers. But I pretty much winged it on my own for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I developed some relationships. And I started, like I said, I started the after school clubs.
Okay.
And I got some of the children involved. And that way the parents, you know, became more agreeable.
Okay.
But it was kind of rough at first.
How long did the transition take you?
Well, I would say Annapolis, Annapolis Junior High was rather trying time.
Okay.
For all of us. And then the, I don't know, then when I moved to South County, it was totally different. Because that was better, greatly improved.
Okay, greatly
because
improved.
those rural area,
Okay.
and believe it or not, they were congenial, the parents and the children. I didn't have any problems.
And I used as many films from the Board of Education that showed us as inventors and, you know, doctors and, you know, doing great things. So they would have some idea, you know, not just slavery was prevalent, but
we contributed.
Right.
Yeah.
We contributed to the growth of these United States.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So those people who were still diehards couldn't say anything. One case, 6 girls got up and left. They went to the office. I said, good. Go ahead. I know they marched themselves back in there.
So what was their concern?
They didn't want to look at these, Dr. Haley and all these inventors, black.
Okay.
They didn't want to look at them.
Okay.
So they got up and left. The principal sent them back. I don't know what she said to them, but I know I didn't have any trouble with them after that.
Okay.
No, I didn't have any trouble. They sat there and looked, they took the notes, whatever they were supposed to do, and we got along fine after that.
In the black community, educators were next to the pastors, the ministers. Those were the 2 key individuals. So every child, I think, came to school understanding that these are going to be the people that are going to help you. And you know, you have the responsibility of listening and cooperating. And I know that, you know, sometimes the debate comes up, were we better when we were all black school or with integration? I think that from a global point of view, integration had to come, but it came with a price.
And back in 1964 is when integration first started really hitting us. Some of them were real veteran teachers. They had been around a long time.
The veteran ones.
Veterans who had been around and established themselves there. So they just, as I said, they were given an opportunity to transfer, and nobody turned them down as far as I can remember.
Okay.
But the teachers that remained here were not disappointed, believe me. They were not disappointed, they were really happy to be here.
And after that, where did you go?
Went to Northeast High School.
Okay.
Taught at Northeast High for 2 years, 66 to 68 there. The teachers didn't have much of a choice of whether, after they completely desegregated, apparently the names of the teachers were given to various schools, and through the personnel department, the principal selected those that they wanted to have. Now,
They looked at the resumes and
There wasn't any resumes in that. They was, you just got their records, whatever records they were.
Okay.
And you went to where they were sent. Now, there a bunch of, must have been about 9 or 10 of us went to Northeast High.
So you had a group?
We had a group that went up there simply because they had a lot of vacancies up there.
Okay.
And the principal knew of me being a baseball coach, so he wanted me to come up there and wanted me to coach baseball, so I coached baseball up there for the 2 years I was there.
And then where'd you go after Northeast?
Went to Northeast, so went to Anne Arundel County Parks and Recreation. I was picked by a director, Mr. Joseph Alton, to be director of Parks and Recreation in Anne Arundel County.
Oh my goodness.
So I was the first, I'm saying, black person to occupy
Oh, you are black.
I am black. A department head position, so I stayed there from 68 to 75. Then I got new county executive. Then I went back in the school system as a guidance counselor. I went to school system guidance counselor, went to Arundel Junior High for 2 years and Annapolis Senior High for 2 years. Then I went over to the Board of Education as a personnel specialist from 1979 and stayed there for 15 years. 13 years personnel specialist and 2 years supervisor of professional personnel. Especially when I went to the personnel department, I met a lot of former students who had become teachers. There are some who were just teachers in the school system, and others had advanced to administrative positions in the school system there.
The interesting thing, at Corcoran, the principal was white.
Okay.
And most everyone was white.
Okay.
The principal never sent a letter out to parents unless he would tell his secretary, run this by Goodwin and let her check it. But he never sent a piece of mail out for anything unless I had to proofread.
And you were a math teacher.
Not that I was a counselor then.
In your training.
Oh, yes.
In your training, you were a math teacher.
Yeah.
So he was relying on your English skills, your knowledge of what was right, and the best way to communicate this to people.
Yeah.
What was he relying on? Sounds like there was some levels of excellence or something that he felt that you provided as a reviewer for.
I retired from Annapolis Senior High School the first time. I was assistant principal at Annapolis Senior High School, and I retired in July 1984. I know that because that's the check number. And I retired then, and then I went on to the board.
I retired as chairman of the speech communication department at Montclair State University. I went to substitute once for a friend at Yale University. And they were no different. They were no better. They were just richer. That was the only thing. They weren't smarter, not more courtesy, nothing more than any. Bates was the best.
I don't think you can measure it in one sentence, and you cannot measure it in dollars and cents. But I think that if I could look at it in terms of its roots spreading, and I think the roots are still spreading, because I think those who've had other families have also, some of that have gone down through generations, and they may not have known the teachers at Bates. They may not have attended Bates, but they have been influenced in a positive way because of Bates High School.
The teachers from Bates are clearly described by the words in Maya Angelou's poem, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. I am the dream and the hope of the slave, I rise. As the world changed around them, the teachers from Bates showed what they really had in them, what they created for us, a center of excellence. The excellence of Bates teachers shone through wherever and whenever they were placed. While they were at Bates, we had an invaluable treasure that made a difference in the lives of multiple families and, of course, generations. We all owe a gratitude of thanks to these teachers. The community thanks you. The students from Bates thank you. And, of course, I thank you. God bless.
There is a school that we love so well. It's Bates, dear Bates. What in whose name all our hearts still thrill. It's Bates, dear Bates. All glory God now may we sing, and to our son all our laurels bring. Bates, we sing of thee, sing of thee, yes, sing of thee. To our tenets we are true, our time with you we'll never shall rue, so our hearts turn fondly to you. Within our hearts they're saying, for we know all thy worth, and sing